Good morning, everyone. um, we had a discussion yesterday and talked about quite a few different things in terms of where we are on this journey. And basically, we talked about staying the course and the whole concept of thinking and processing spiritually based upon what we have learned about ourselves and what it means to be wonderfully and fearfully made. So I want to ask if there are any questions about yesterday or anything else that comes to your mind or has come to your mind. Okay.
Question, Sage, Vermel.
Uh-huh.
Ms. Barber was talking yesterday about what's about the alignment of the planets and how we have an opportunity here. And I thought she said something about how we could do it, but we never really discussed how. And I was hoping that we could do that today, if I remember correctly.
Barbara, are you on? Okay.
We can wait till she's on then, maybe?
Well, we can. We get a recap from her. However, I would like to address it.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
The energy from the planets lining up is going to enter the environment of the Earth regardless. The question is, are we going to take notice? And because we have taken notice of it, the thing that grants us the benefit from it is our desire. Our desire is to embrace all of the energy of the universe that's possible for us to embrace. And by doing so, our thoughts, our journey, they are being guided by the energy of the universe. That is one of the reasons that we more frequently than ever recognize right and wrong or recognize what we should be processing and should not be processing in our thoughts. Also, it gives us the power.
Good morning.
Good morning. Gives us access to our power to that we were created with to bring order, to bring a sense of balance to the earth. That help you, Vermel?
Yes, it does. And I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions?
Hey, Red, this is Charles.
Sure.
Is the spirit of God is an entity like Jesus? You understand what I'm trying to say?
I do.
The spirit of God is all like a God too.
Actually, there is no spirit of God because God is spirit. There is no body of Charles because Charles, that's your body. So if Elohim is spirit, then it's not the spirit of, it is the spirit period. Because everything that exists, everything that has the life of the spirit of Elohim. So it's Elohim. You cannot separate anyone or anything from the spirit. The church has taught us when we are going through certain procedures in terms of shouting or in terms of our response to songs, then that's the Spirit of God upon us. It's not the Spirit of God upon us. It's that we are the Spirit, period. Does that make sense, Charles?
Yes, but I'm gonna still mull it over some more.
I want you to. It's almost like
Yeah.
like the Native Americans say that they don't live on the land, they live with the land. We don't live by the Spirit of God. We are the Spirit of God. That makes sense.
Whole lot of sense.
Thank you.
Pastor,
Any
can you
other
get a little closer to your mic?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? Yesterday I spoke to you about something I wanted to talk about, but I promise you I don't remember what it was. Do any of you remember? You can say no if you don't.
Do not.
Okay. All right. Well, let's continue along the vein that we were traveling yesterday in terms of the nature of our energy in relationship to the environment that we live in. The environment that we live in is one of greed and manipulation. However, our desires are to manifest an environment that was intended from the beginning. The earth has never experienced what we were created to do. And the reason the earth has not experienced what we were created to do is because we have never done it. Example, we were told to dominate, which means that we were told to bring order to this world. We are to bring the mindset of man to a place where man understands that it is divine, as opposed to being animalistic. I believe when the Creator says to that entity Adam, name the animals, he is speaking more about the attitudes and the principles that this man is to follow. And in doing so, he was also speaking to those principles that this type of man were to avoid. If all the principles of righteousness had been presented and man embraced them, then there would be no earth to dominate. There would be no earth to bring to a place of balance. There would be no way for us to be the creators that we are. We have lived in a vacuum all of these years, and we have not embraced the reality of being creators, even though we've talked about co-creating. We have begun to come out of that vacuum and begun to see what reality is supposed to be, and that reality is supposed to be based upon our desire to be as our Creator is, because we were created in the image of our Creator. We have been given the substance to bring into existence a type of world where humans can exist, a type of world where Elohim is having this human experience. It has not been experienced up until this point because the focus has been on the environment itself. The focus has been on the material things and our thoughts have not been geared towards the spiritual. Now that we are focused on the spiritual more than ever before, and our focus is not simply because we want it to be focused, it's because we need to be focused. We didn't even know what we wanted until we start getting snippets of what spirituality is. And by our embracing what the snippets that we were getting, we were able to then embrace the reality of who we were created to be. And now we are the vanguard, as far as I can see, the vanguard of wholeness in the earth, because I don't know anyone else who would dare say that they are Elohim because they were created as Elohim. You have to first be strong enough to really embrace that reality before you can travel this pathway that brings all men under the umbrella of spirituality. Jesus did not come to bring us under that umbrella. Jesus came to show us how to get under that umbrella or to create that umbrella. And we got lost in the noise about Jesus coming to save us. Yet, when we purported to be saved, we were still doing some of the same things that we were doing prior to our quote-unquote salvation. There was a whole prescription of do not in the prescription for salvation. Yet, when we look at what Jesus dealt with, the majority of what Jesus dealt with were the things that we should be doing. We should be honoring the Father. We should be we should be our brother's keeper. We should be bringing into existence an environment that's free of sickness and disease. We should be feeding the multitude. We should be take responsibility for those who have less than what it takes to live a comfortable life in this society. Questions, comments?
Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully, what I'm about to say will add to what Reverend Richard has said. Just based on the lesson that was on yesterday and what Miss Evelyn asked, when you talk about environment, our workplace is an environment, and by definition, wealthy means an abundance of money, resource, and assets. However, if you just take money out of it, one of the things that we all do very well, we maneuver in a wealthy aspect, yet take money out of Webster's definition. And what I mean by that is the 9 to 12 people that I know that work at Lear with Tiffany, whenever I say, hey, Tiff, they all say her name with excitement, enthusiasm. That's from the yard dog meaning trailer switcher, the people in the office. And if I ask a female, hey, Tiffany, they all kind of say it unanimous. It's a joy to know Tiffany. If it's a male, they will say things like, when Tiff and her brother cutting the fool and acting some shenanigans, not meaning you're not getting the work done. Their energy has in them, I just had to get out the office and experience what Tiffany and her brother is doing to help me get through. So one of the things I think we need to applaud ourselves on is all of us move in a wealthy aspect. Based on what Miss Evelyn stated, on yesterday of applying for a promotion or being requested to submit your application in, some things we may not get. If we don't get the promotion, we ain't never had the flu. We get a speeding ticket or a cop pulls us over. The cop gives us leniency. I'm just going to give you a warning. So this whole aspect of how we maneuver out here based upon our energy, people will take advantage of. So that's all I had to say. And I hope that it didn't confuse anyone. And I hope it added to what Reverend Richard was saying about the individual and the environment. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. When I talked about environment, not so much referring to the individual environment. I am talking about the environment of this Earth atmosphere, period. I'm talking about the consciousness of this Earth realm. When I talk about the environment, the individual environment interactions are based upon what our desires are. For example, you mentioned the example that Evelyn gave us yesterday. If Evelyn's desire was not to bring peace, to bring order to this earth, then her response in that type of environment would have been totally different. The difference in that environment, that example that she gave, could have ended several different ways. However, when I talk, her response to it is not a response to just her individual environment. It is a response to the entire environment of the globe, because everything that we do has an effect on everyone else, whether we realize it, accept it, or not. So very rarely, if ever, when I talk about our environmental interactions, I'm talking about the immediate environment of an individual, because collective individuals, as a collective of individuals, we are mankind, period. So that's what I'm speaking of when I talk environment. However, I thank you for your input. Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Yeah, Pastor, when you said we have to take advantage, good morning, everyone, this is Jackie, that we need to take responsibility for those that, I think you said have less than. Is that maybe like just interceding for them or breathing on their behalf?
It's all of it. I've always said, you don't give to someone if you don't feel it. If you are giving simply because you want to give and you don't, and you're giving against what you feel internally, then yes, you have to ask yourself why you're doing it. Are you doing it to make you feel good, or are you doing it because it's the right thing to do? Giving, when you give your energy as well. So when you give, knowing that you are being guided in that direction to give, then you are giving your energy. And the energy that you're giving is the energy that brings that bursts a sense of being our brother's keeper. When you give and you don't feel it, and you're just giving simply because it's going to make you feel good, then the energy that you're giving is energy of selfishness. Does that make sense, Jackie?
It does, but I thought I heard you say take responsibility for those. Am I correct? Did I hear that correctly?
Yes. Taking responsibility means it includes all that, Jackie. It includes the giving or not giving, because you can give to someone, they end up worse off than what they were, or you can end up being a codependent. So the responsibility on both ends is ours. All right?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Let me give you an example. Jesus did not heal everybody who was sick. Jesus did not feed everyone who was hungry. If you remember it, the ones who Jesus fed that were hungry are the ones who came to hear him speak. But he didn't feed everyone who was hungry. So you have to deal with it on the basis of spirituality and not a missionary. Because one of the most dangerous entities in our society are missionaries. And they have done more damage than they've done good around the world. Any questions about that?
Rev, can it be both? You get a feeling of excitement, not looking for a thank you. You gave, and I say, you know what, George, or you know what, Quick, you aided humanity, makes me feel good, and the origin of my heart is not for selfish gain. In some cases, it has been. Yet in some cases, it has not within the last 10 years. So can it also be duality of, you know what, George, you contributed to today. The next day, build on what you did, whoop-de-wop, wop, wop. So can it be duality where it is a good feeling and it's righteous, or it's just one or the other? If that's a fair question.
George, I can answer that question. So it can go two different ways, and it depends on kind of like what's the origin of that happiness, where that happiness is coming from. So for example, if while you out on the road or whatever, and you see someone who is hungry, and you just know they need money, and let's say you could have been doing whatever earlier that day or living your life how whatever, and then you can give to that person, and then just because you give to that person, that's like a token of something for you yourself to feel good, like I did something good today, so that makes me a good person. I'm a great person. That happens all the time when people give, for lack of better words, falsely for themselves. Now let's take that same scenario and look at it differently. Let's say you saw this same person, another incident or whatever, and you saw that this person was extremely hungry. And then as interceding, you're in a sense stepping in the place of that person. So now you feel hunger inside of yourself. You literally put yourself in that person's shoes and in a sense joined them. And you like, oh no, we got to get you something to eat. You can't be out here hungry. And so you give that person, knowing you probably, come on, man, you might take them to the buffet or whatever, as well, and then give them some extra money for later on, or take them in the restaurant and get something to eat. Now that is a different type of fulfillment, is not that you may experience, and it's not even really happiness, but it's a sense of joy, because even if you ate food or not, and you could have been hungry yourself and you walked up, now you feel filled from within inside because you put yourself in that person's shoes. So your happiness is not just the happiness more so of just George, is in a sense of your happiness is coming from you have put yourself in that person's position, and now that need that is there, you perceive to be there, is now being met. So that's one example of how someone can be very happy or joyous from doing a quote unquote good deed for another person. I'm finished.
George?
And that's spot on. I mean, when I do give, I'm grateful from who I learned it from. Mama and daddy, aunts and uncles, or people who were not even kin to me. It's just that question of, if something make you feel good or gives you pleasure, you have to question it. And if I know the origin of my heart is true blue, it's just that. Go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead. I thought you finished. Go ahead.
You know, I just have to question it. I do feel good. I do feel like I aided humanity. I do feel like, hey, I'm an extension of greater new faith. I'm an extension of the Creator. So these are just things that I would ask myself, and feeling good of, I did something. And was that abnormal to think like that? Was it normal to think like that? Am I being selfish? And I'm not being selfish. Those are just things I just asked myself. That's it. But yet, in your response to what I asked, you did give a great deal of clarity, though.
Yeah, it is a difference between saying or being extremely happy because I did something versus it just being extremely happy because something got done, whether it was me or someone else. Kind of like the same way when we get joy out of seeing someone overcome something or their success, and it may have nothing to do with us and not even affect us at all. Like it may not even seem to benefit us, but we're still happy and joyous that particular thing, was able to get done. And then even if you want to think about it further, you can also have happiness that you are in a position to even solve a problem, but or a situation. But the thing is you more so happy of and joyous of that situation being taken care of. Your joy has came from seeing your in a sense your fellow human thrive. That's where the joy is coming from. That's when you're more so connected to that other individual, and so it's about them as well, not just me. So it really just depends on where it's coming from. I'm finished.
Good morning. This is Kathy. I want to but I want to point out something that Sheldon said and let him speak to it a little more. In your explanation with George just now, you gave a clear, what I would call definition of being able to intercede for someone. And I had not heard it put that way before. And I love the way you said it, because you said when you're interceding for someone, you are putting yourself in that person's place and feeling what they feel. Could you speak to that a little bit more, Sheldon? Because I don't want that to be missed, because I think that is very powerful.
Yeah, when you're interceding for someone, and we've said it before in terms of standing in the gap, it is the same sense as having like a blood brother or a blood sisters, so to speak. Like we are in this together, and so it's just not loose words. It's more so like no, we are going to get through this. And when Pastor Richard just mentioned responsibility a moment ago, you're actually taking on and saying, this is my responsibility as well. That's how serious I'm actually taking this particular situation. And that situation doesn't even necessarily mean that you are, it doesn't mean that some physical thing is even transpiring. It just simply means that you have aligned yourself with that person, putting yourself in those person's shoes, feeling the situation or that they're going through, to the point where you're literally psychologically going through the situation. You may handle it differently, of course. They could be someone who's dealing with like a great deal of stress or anxiety. You could even be stepping in with them and then saying, okay, I'm going to enter the situation with you and I am going to then calm the storm, so to speak, within myself. But the point is you're stepping off on the ledge with them, whatever situation that is going on. And like I said, it starts well before anything is done from a physical standpoint. It is a psychological thing. That's what intercession means. It's just not loose words and saying, yeah, I got you. And it just being some words or it coming from a place of that's what's even supposed to be said, because interceding for someone can't even be fake because it's an actual thing that you're doing. When I say psychologically, I mean internally. So for example, in a sense, when yesterday when Miss Evelyn was talking about her situation at her office, everyone, or at least some of you, I would definitely say the vast majority of you, you put yourself in Miss Evelyn's place. You went to her office. You dealt with what she dealt with. You sat with those emotions that she might have been experiencing. You imagine yourself experiencing those emotions, and then you may have processed them or dealt with them, whichever way, which of course we discussed yesterday, and how to get through that. But all of you did those things. That is, in a sense, intercession. Did that answer your question? I guess clearly.
Absolutely. Thank you. I understood what you said, but I thought it was worth hearing it again, even with more explanation. So thank you, Sheldon.
And George just came from a very personal place. Being here in New York when I first came, there were definitely times where I didn't have money to eat, but didn't tell anyone, and would be like using $5 a day to get something at the halal, and then I would go to like some student groups or whatever that I would be in, and I would eat. But there had been times when I would walk by the certain group of homeless people, and actually, they felt like family, and some of them had mental illnesses and stuff like that. And I would see them like on a daily basis, anytime at night if I'm walking by, like whenever. And I could be walking around and I could be hungry to think about what I'm going to eat later on that day. And just seeing them with some food that they have got from somewhere and sitting on like some steps somewhere eating, that brought me great joy. And even within myself, I would feel fulfilled and no longer feel hungry just because I was so happy. And it was like a part of my tribe, in a sense, we're actually eating at the moment. So when we are interceding with people and we're talking about that happiness, that's what we're talking about in terms of it coming from a good place, versus me just walking by and having all this food and I just give to them and really don't care. I'm really just trying to get rid of this food I have anyway. Like, yeah, here, do whatever you want to with it. And then I feel like, you know what? I was about to throw this in the trash, and I didn't throw it in the trash, and I gave it to these homeless people. Let me pat myself on the back. I'm a great person. So, yeah.
Hey, Sheldon, it's Ron. Yeah, that example you gave stood out to me as well. And another example of it, though, is something, we feel because we're a lot closer to it than we think. Think about it. Every time somebody gets shot or gets hurt, especially if it's, someone, an African, by police brutality, we feel that. You automatically just feel that pain, not only from the person who was affected, but the family and friends. Got to a point one time you hated to see somebody on TV crying because there was another crisis that we all went through, and it would just affect your energy. I think it also ties into something Pastor said earlier. and I'm just using your words too. The naming of the animals, if I can put that together with what you just said, is also the way that it shows that we're all tied together. There's whether you're at your worst being the animalistic, or you're at the height of being the human, you should be able to feel any type of feelings and compassion that someone else is feeling. So not just showing you what to avoid and what to live by, but showing you that the empathy that you are to have for others is already built in you. You feel that because we're all the same. So thank you.
Before you say anything, Rep, I want to know, how did this ties in with Peter and that man at the gate of Beautiful?
Talking about the man who asked him for what he had, wanted to buy it. Is that what you're talking about?
No, when the man was always begging at the gate.
I got you.
And
Silver
okay,
and gold, right? Silver and gold I do not have.
right.
But, okay. What he was telling him is that the principles of the kingdom are far more valuable than what he was asking for. You're begging for money. You're searching for food for your body, but you don't know what the real food is and what kind of nourishment it can provide for you. I think that's a classic example, Charles, of what we are talking about when we talk about giving. The whole concept of giving is predicated upon the depth of our beliefs about who we are and what in fact Jesus taught. So I think that's very important.
And Pastor, that's also a great example based on what Charles asked when you talked about not giving unless you feel it.
Yes.
It may be that the very thing you're asking for is not what you need at all. And if I'm in a place of intercessory with you, then I'm going to feel what you need, and I give you what you need. That's part of being I am. I am what you need me to be when you need me to be it. So it's very important that you just don't get in the habit of throwing monetary things at people. You got to feel what they need and give them what they need. And so though he was asking for one thing, he was given the greater thing that he didn't even know that he needed. So I think that's a great example. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I was just about to say, and when we speak of giving, we're definitely not just talking about something that is physical. When I was talking about gifts and things that we all have to offer and that we are, there are non-tangible things for which even a value cannot be placed upon. And it doesn't even mean that we have to interact with people or individuals or groups to be interceding on them. In a sense, we are just changing the energy or helping to change the energy for them as they're dealing with whatever situation is present. And they don't even have to know for which that even came from. And it's something that we naturally do and have always been doing, but don't necessarily pay attention to it. George was talking about his wife earlier today. There is most like a situation where that is a calm and peaceful and joyous place, a work environment that she creates that people are allowed to go to, and in a sense to escape other things that they are going through in their life. That is something that is lifting them up. That is something she is automatically doing, being herself, and she's not just giving them money. When we talk about being the light of the world, is essentially just saying changing the energy and bringing light or being light in certain situations. I'm finished.
Thank you, sir.
One thing I wanted to add, or add and correction, if Sheldon was talking about me, Tiffany ain't my wife. My wife, Monique.
Oh, sorry, I
I was,
got the name mixed up. Thank you for the correction.
yeah, yeah. The other aspect of giving, with a certain percentage of people, some people will give you money to keep you away from knowledge, and some people will give you knowledge to get you closer to the coin. So in this whole aspect of giving, the person who elects to give you knowledge and wisdom and their experience over just giving you the coin, I feel that is the better aspect of giving. The person that gives you money, if you don't know the origin of it, their origin of it could be, I'm going to give you money because I don't want you to gain access to knowledge. So if we look at that, the parable of the Bible, the daddy is to give. It's a gift or an inheritance to his children and also to his children's children. A certain percentage of African Americans feel the gift or the inheritance is 401k, insurance, properties, and that is a gift or an inheritance. Yet that's not long lived, doesn't have a lot of equity. Yet the knowledge that the parent gives you, male or female, mother or father, don't take no wooden nickels. If you put your cup down at an event, don't go back to the party, whether it's water, alcohol, Kool-Aid. Keep clean undergarments on in case you're in an accident. And when I look at that, of what my daddy would do, before my daddy would get his car serviced, he would go get it detailed. Now I would ask him, why are you doing that? He said, people will treat your vehicle the way you treat it. So those kind of giving of knowledge has more equity to me than just a physical coin of someone giving you money. Thank you very much.
George, what you just described was the missionary giving you money, giving you material things in order to avoid you receiving knowledge. When I was in Haiti, and some of you heard me tell this before, and I came in contact with missionaries from the Southern Baptist Church. And the lady said to me boastfully that they had been in Haiti for 50 years. And I asked her, why is it that you've been here for 50 years? And she said, helping the people. And I said, do you not think it would be better to teach the people how to help themselves rather than you giving them because they are in the same state they were in 50 years ago? Well, she took offense to that. But that's exactly what you were describing. Missionaries are on a journey to keep people beholden to them. Missionaries are not there to change anyone's life for the better. They are there to keep them under control with the scriptures and with the handout. That's exactly what you described a few moments ago, George. And we as a people, we bought into that because we were taught, just like everything else, we were taught we were supposed to do that, but to no effect. Something else that was said earlier, I want to speak to as well. When Ron talked about the empathy that's built in us, especially when we see the brutality that others are receiving. Think about it. Think about this. Why is it that we feel it? Why is it? Yes, the empathy is built in, but if the empathy is built in us, it's also built in everyone else. So why is it that we feel it and others don't?
Well, Reb, to hopefully answer that question, just from a historical aspect, when you look at the African American and you compare it to the European has always implemented coin. Coin has never been, coin from a historical aspect, we never brought coin to the table. Never. The gold, the zinc, the minerals, the artifacts, we respected them. The European turned it into something else that eventually we bought into. The whole aspect of just empathy, and you alluded to it earlier about 4 or 5 Sundays ago, of the pineal gland of the Vietnam veteran, it was wider or bigger in the African American than the European. And in my experience, when I was over in Iraq as a contractor, clinical psychologist who was European, whenever we would go through towns, all of the African Americans, we would throw food out of our truck, a Pop-Tart, a Gatorade, a Snicker bar. And when we would go through these towns, they would hold up what they would want. And the clinical psychologist stated to us, you are not to do this. The military, the last truck of the military truck has a bag that they will cut and leave it for the people. And he stated that this is something I don't have to tell the European male. I have to tell you African Americans that if you don't follow instructions, you will get on the flight coming back to your homeland. Follow instructions. So it's in us to show empathy, to take on someone's experience and just get it done. That may not be so much by way of the European culture, because the European culture is the dominate. Whenever I have to represent a driver by way of a grievance, politely I have to exert my dominance of that European male who I have to go up against to protect this driver. Their whole aspect is just to dominate. So when you look at that's it right there, Rev.
Okay. Now, this is where I was going with that, George, and to the rest of you. The reason is because, well, let me back up. The empathy that we feel when someone is brutalized, especially by the police or a mob, as was Aubrey in Georgia. The African on the continent does not get upset. The Japanese doesn't get upset. The Caucasian certainly doesn't get upset. The Chinese doesn't. We do. Why? We even get upset when we are informed about brutality to other people any place. Why? We are inextricably bound together. We feel it deeply because we are experiencing the same energy, the energy of Melchizedek. We are an appendage that seemingly has been cut off from everyone else. We have been brought into this place for a purpose, regardless of how we got here. And in order to mitigate the brutal experiences that we have had throughout our time here, we must do what we were brought here to do, and that is to bring civilization to a place that have the material accoutrements that for comfort, but don't have the internal empathy, or don't know how to access, or don't want to access that empathy for anyone other than themselves. The way I see us as Africans who were brought into America to feed and clothe and give shelter to, and to expand the tools of our work. We are those people who were brought here to do that. And our coming here was not for that specific reason. So I see us as a group of people who is pretty much cut off from everyone else. We don't have a common language in terms of a cultural language. Yet we speak in ways that others don't understand. We have embedded in us cultural aspects of the land from which we came or was brought, because we certainly didn't come on our own. And we have adapted to a circumstance that we were to change. Rather than change it, we adapted to it. And as a result of that adaptation, we have experienced more and more exploitation. So when Ron talked about the empathy within, I do not see that empathy that we experience shown by many other people. As a matter of fact, the most of other races, for lack of a better word, that I have seen empathy towards us has been in the last 2 or 3 years. Prior to that, that was not my experience. And maybe some of you did experience it, but it wasn't mine. My experience has always been the pain that we go through when we are experiencing the brutal plight of others who look like us. And regardless of whether the door at the higher echelons of employment are open to a few, is never open to talent. It's only open for a few. It's not open to ability. It's open for a few. And that open door is designed to keep us reaching for the carrot and never being able to get it, to keep our focus off of our purpose for being in this land. Yes, we were brought here as enslaved people, but our purpose for being here is to free the globe of its ignorance of who it is. Our purpose for being here is to bring freedom to all of those who don't know what freedom is, and see freedom as opportunity to move physically through certain areas of the earth. For example, freedom is not being able to go to a park to intermingle with Caucasians, wherein we were not permitted to do that in the past. Freedom is not going to school with Caucasians whose sole purpose is to teach you to be ignorant of yourself and embrace everything that our Europeans say is right. So when I talk about, when I hear rather, the concept of empathy within, I see that within us, but not directed towards us. Thank you. Questions or comments?
I think I don't think we recognize and know how special that verse was that we once saw, where it says, "I will bring Cush back to me." There is no one on the planet like Cush. He is an isolated being. He's isolated for a purpose. He has no country. He has no people. He is brought here for the purpose of everyone. And when we look at that, that's hard to wrap our minds around and to even try to see that. But what it is saying is, when we finally open our eyes and we see that we are not here for the politics, we're not here for the money, we're not here for the glitz and the glamour and the positions, but we are here to learn who we are and walk in that direction and be the beings that we are designed to be. And yes, the distractions are indeed great, as they are, supposed to be to keep us focused and to strengthen us. But once we become that balance, that we can be balanced within and balance one another, we bring balance to the world. So yeah, it is not something that the rest of the world feels just yet, but we are the tip of that spear to make that happen. And it just shows you what the Creator really thinks of us. To me, it does anyway.
I agree with you, Ron. Anyone else? Comment, question?
Hi, Pastor. I have a question. This is Teresa. You started off saying what freedom is not. Can you elaborate on what freedom is?
Yes, ma'am. Freedom is knowing who you are. What do I mean by that? Freedom is recognizing that you are divine, that you have an innate power to bring change for the benefit of humanity. Freedom is looking beyond what's happening to you and seek to make things better for other people. Our freedom is not based upon a job, but is based upon a recognition that all men were created from the same Creator, and all men came from the same womb. That knowing who you are is the greatest freedom that you can ever experience, because it gives you an indication of what is right and what is wrong. And I don't mean that in the classical sense of right and wrong. Maybe I should have said it gives you a greater sense of what is righteous and what is unrighteous. And it looks beyond what has happened to you to see what needs to happen for everyone. We do not fight, we do not respond in the way that we are treated. Why? Because freedom tells us that ignorance only responds like a barbarian, and righteousness responds as a God, as a creator. The idea of freedom is simply knowing that you are Elohim, and there are responsibilities that comes with that. The last thing I want to say before I ask if there are questions is this. Whether it be the Native Americans or whether it be the Africans, neither one of us responded to Caucasians the way that they treated us, because we are not like them. That a mantra of the African who was brought as a slave and the Native Americans against whom genocide was committed. That mantra has always been there. We are not like them. Does that make sense? Does that help you, Teresa?
Yes, Pastor, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you for the question. Any other questions or comments? I have been reminded of something that I've talked about, was going to talk about, and it actually does tie into what we're talking about now, because you cannot experience that freedom. You cannot know what that the empathy that we feel is for unless you know who you are. It is extremely dangerous to know what the truth is and stay in the traditional setting. Why? Because either we are going to be who we were created to be, or we are going to be hypocritical about who we say we are. There are those who stay in settings because they teach. However, there are those who stay in settings because they don't want to be disconnected. They feel like it's necessary for them to be there. I have heard people say that they stay in the church where they are because they want to have their funeral there. Well, they're already dead, and they're having a funeral every Sunday. The danger in that is getting, let me put it this way, it is no different than someone who was addicted to crack cocaine, and they left, and they are fine because they broke ties with that group that they were influenced by. The moment they come back, they don't even have to deal with that group that they were influenced by. But the energy of that desire for cocaine begins to hound them. And they end up right back in the position where they were prior to their leaving. I use that because I have seen it happen over and over again. That's the same effect that you experience when you are in a traditional setting and you know what the truth is. You have to make a choice of are you going to serve the God on the other side of the river, traditional, or are you going to be a God who serves on this side of the river, knowing who you are? Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes, and I just wanted to add something, Pastor, because when you said we were talking about freedom, and the question was asked, what is freedom? Well, I was just sitting here thinking the greatest freedom we can know in terms of our spiritual growth is freedom from religious dogma. And even Jesus taught against religious dogma, because it starts to get people into a mindset, a certain mindset that kind of shuts them down in terms of their spiritual growth. But the other thing I was going to say is, the greatest freedom we can have is freedom from religious dogma, because in terms of, well, for lack of a better word, in terms of sin, when you talk about adultery, it's talking about not in relationships per se, but in your relationship with the Creator. when you talk about blasphemy, it has to do with what you're focusing on in terms of your spiritual growth. So the greatest freedom we find is freedom from religious dogma and a turning to the creator and to the truth. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else?
Yeah, well,
I-
Audrey, go ahead, Ron.
No, I like what you said. I just wanted to repeat that. You said blasphemy and something else. Can you remember what you just said? Because I had never heard it put that way.
I said when we commit blasphemy, it's based on our religious, what we're doing in terms of our religious growth. When we commit adultery, it has more to do with our relationship with the creator, not with who we're married to or whatever. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I like that. Okay.
Thank you. I think Sheldon was about to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to speak towards the religious dogma as it relates to freedom and our growth and our expanded consciousness. And I noticed, and was actually thinking about this yesterday, something that I think we take for granted that we do here. And I think I know it plays a huge role in our understanding and growth. And that is of how this forum works, where anyone is encouraged to ask whatever question they may have, as well as to question the things that we are saying also. And a long time ago, Pastor Richard said that once you start to see, or as you become more acquainted in a sense with God, God begins to look less like God. Well, that's how this internal and personal journey works in terms of growth and expanding consciousness, where it is fueled by that questioning, that inner integrity, and being able to also critique ourselves and accept things and change our beliefs, etc. And then also along with that, when having the confidence and strength to do that, what it also does is that confidence leads to more knowledge and more understanding and more experiences. So all of that works hand in hand, where it is actually a requirement for growth. And no one will say or would think it completely ludicrous or crazy to say, I don't want to grow. Like, you don't have at a certain age to say, even on a regular earthly human level, you know what, I've reached X and X age. There's not another thing in life that I want to learn. I'm fine right now. I don't need to learn another thing. No, that's preposterous. But when you're in a situation where in a dogmatic environment, and where this is all that there is, it chokes off any possible growth whatsoever, and of course is discouraged. I just wanted to add that part.
Thank you, sir. I think the bottom line is you can't play both sides against the middle and expect to win, or expect to be better than a better person, or to be an advantage for humanity, or to be an advocate for humanity. You cannot play both sides against the middle and do that. You cannot be Tim Scott and do that. You cannot. You can't serve two masters, because you're going to lean towards one more than the other, love them more than the other. The decision has to be made, and what happens is it is easier to dismiss the spiritual because you don't see it with your eyes, and call what you do see with your eyes spiritual. It's simply indoctrination that causes that. When you embrace the reality of Melchizedek, then you don't have an origin that you can point to. You don't have a language that's indigenous to you. You don't have a culture that everyone recognizes as you. You don't have that surname that ties you to a place. When you embrace it that way, then you see with the eye. However, if you cannot embrace the reality of Melchizedek, then you continuously make excuses for being in religious settings. You continue to make excuses for praying the way we were taught to pray and seeing no results. You continue to make excuses for being addicted to a set of doctrines that has no validity in Scripture at all. When you realize who you are and embrace it, you don't make excuses. You accept the shortcomings and you embrace truth for what it is. And you begin to see that those desires of your heart begin to materialize, because the desires are not a house with a picket fence or 6 cars or a job that pays you and has a great retirement plan. The desires of your heart is totally for humanity. And you are not taught that in any church setting. You're not taught that in Islam, Christianity, Judaism. None of those are you taught that. Neither in Hinduism as they are taught today. However, if we go back to the root of all of those, then we begin to see that every single one of those that have been named a religion today was simply a way of life that was being taught so that we could live in harmony. As a matter of fact, the whole purpose for the Cushite introducing education was for us to know who we are, for introducing written material, be it on the cave or a stone or papyrus. All of this was done for us to know that we are deities, not for us to get a job or to feel like we are better than someone. Religion teaches that we are educated to get a job. We are better than someone else if we have a degree. When we dismiss the reality that education is not about a degree, education is about functioning for the benefit of humanity and desiring to embrace who you are spiritually. That's education. Thank you. Questions or comments? No questions, no comments? Okay. Go ahead.
I would just comment on this subject, how one staying in the church environment has an effect that the attendee is not aware of when also trying to grow spiritually. And it is because of the subconscious messages that are taken in that on the surface seem very harmless. But what those things do is they maintain a set of belief that attendee then lives by, and in a sense, it serves as a cage. And the reason why I mean that it serves as a cage is because it shuts out other types of awareness and focus, which is that's all it is when we talk about um, becoming more aware of our inner senses. Those inner senses are there all along. It's just a matter of the beliefs that we carry help to expand our focus to the point that we actually become more and more aware of them in terms of noticing them. So and when you talk about the Miss Chestic and you talk about opening up the third eye, if you are buying into the concept for example, that I pray in this way, where I am simply putting in my request for something and hoping out of all the prayer requests, my request is picked out of a lottery, then there's not that confidence in creating in terms of how reality works, how real prayer works, without actually having that understanding. So I say that all to say that it can be harmful in terms of creating a stagnant situation by continuing to, I don't want to say receive bad doctrine, but receiving, I'll say, limiting doctrine over and over again on a regular basis. It's not until you come encounter with those beliefs and you're willing to change them or replace them that you're actually able to open up many more opportunities for one's awareness and focus to be expanded. And that sounded a little theoretical, so please ask any questions and I can elaborate if there are.
There's this guy on Andy Griffin show. I forgot his name, but he was quote unquote the town drunk. And every time
Was
he
it
got
Otis?
drunk, yeah, Otis. Every time Otis would get drunk, Otis knew he could go to the jailhouse and he could get the key and open the cell and put himself in there and sleep it off. It's like Otis knows that, you know, I can do this and I'm jail myself. Well, what you're just describing is the same thing that Audrey had said about freedom from religious dogma. In other words, we are at a point now where we understand who we are and that we're not chained emotionally by that religious dogma anymore. But to keep going back and hearing the same thing is like keep going back and putting ourselves behind the bars, the emotional bars, the religious bars of that same dogma to be fed more and more of the same thing as if it was an addiction in a sense. And that's what the insane part of it is. The insane part is knowing you're free and yet subjecting yourself continuously to bondage. That just does not make sense. So as you guys are talking, that's what I thought about.
Thank you, ma'am.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that not the same thing as a dog going back to his vomit?
Yep. Yep. Same thing. And if you think about what that means, and you can see very clearly the example that Barbara gave about Otis. And I don't see any difference in that unless someone else does. I need no she only knew Otis or Andy Griffin.
Yeah, we didn't have cable, so that Sanford and Son and the Jeffersons. Yes, sir.
Okay. So you've been exposed, thankfully.
Yeah.
May I ask you a question? Do everyone understand, or what's being said when we talk about the concept of Melchizedek? If you don't, just say I don't. If you do, please reply.
I don't.
I don't. No,
Okay.
I don't.
Okay. Ron, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm here.
Will you deal with the explanation, please?
Well, I think about it. If you look at the African American, for example, and we use the example of Cush, the statement that we once saw in scriptures that talked about, "I'll bring Cush back to me in chains." We are people that have no beginning or end. I mean, yeah, you can technically do it with DNA testing or whatnot, but what I'm saying is we have no home. We're here for a purpose. We're kind of plucked out of one environment and placed in another. And once we see that it has been a spiritual journey, that's when the enlightenment starts. In other words, we are kept in the dark while we're chasing this religious dogma. It keeps us bound to the nothingness of religion. So our eyes are open now, and it begins to open the eyes of the rest of the world as we understand who we are. Another example to me is I used the elephant yesterday in the matriarch. I was looking at the 12th chapter of Genesis, and we talk about God and the nation of Israel, but the promise was made to the seed. A seed is a spiritual entity. A seed has no beginning or end. Think about it. A seed contains everything that tree is going to be. And Abraham was the seed. So when you look at that and you look at Abraham as that matriarch elephant, and you see that all those thousands of years that journey's been taken, it's been that matriarch. All those years that's going to come after, it's been that matriarch. It's been the same journey over and over and over. And the one thing she has one, I have a purpose, and that is to take care of this family. And number two, I can't fail. She goes from one watering hole to the next, but she knows when I get to the next one, I'm going to find what I'm looking for. I cannot fail. So when we talk about that and look at who Melchizedek was and the relationship he had with Abraham, to me, among other things, it is showing us how to remain balanced, to recognize who we are, and to always keep that focus, because there will be distractions. There will be things that and other people that are close to us are going to take us off course a little bit. But it's just an opportunity to strengthen you and to remind you who you are. So if you see yourself as a seed, if you see yourself as Melchizedek, you see yourself as a spiritual entity, and you recognize that is the most powerful thing, not only in your life, but in the earth. And that is, to me, is what brings about balance in the earth and balance into who we are right now in the course that we're on now. And I hope I didn't mess it up too bad. I hope it kind of helped. If not, ask me a question.
Thank you, sir. Questions, comments?
Can I add something to that, Rev? That Melchizedek represents pure righteousness. It's when we look at operating in the order of Melchizedek, it talks about doing things based on pure righteousness.
Would you elaborate?
Sure, and just Ron said he's the epitome there. So when they talked about Abraham and Jesus being ordained in the order of Melchizedek, he was the first king and priest at the same time, but he also represents righteousness. And so when we do things, we have a tendency to do what we think is right, but when we're doing it based on what Melchizedek is, we're doing it based on total righteousness and what should be done based on the concept of who we are and how we embrace who we are. And so Melchizedek, he ruled and he blessed and he ordained folks. There is no beginning and end to him, but it is the energy of just pure righteousness. So whatever we do, we're doing based on a righteous thing to do, and that energy and that spirit is what Melchizedek represents. It's kind of like not doing anything based on selfish reasons or not doing it based on the benefits we receive. He is just doing things based on righteousness, and righteousness is just basically based on the essence of who we are and how we're supposed to operate when it comes to Elohim. So just to add to what Ron was saying, it's like he represents motive of just pure righteousness, if that helps.
Yep.
And when I listen at you say that, what I hear is you have the power and authority. You have everything within you if you stay the course to get this job done. If you stay the course, if you see and recognize who you are the journey. And there is nothing that can take that away or move you off that course. You are the energy that moves in that direction.
Correct, yes.
And as mentioned, righteousness, since we're on the topic of talking about church, their version of righteousness, which all of us are familiar with, is that of telling us what is right or what is wrong, and we should do this and we should do that. The Melchizedek righteousness is not just being told what righteousness is, but having an understanding of feeling the righteousness within and knowing what righteousness is beyond words, and aligning yourself with that righteousness. You're not in church, you're more so just following directions that have been placed upon you, so to speak, but you have absolutely nothing to do with it. You don't interact, you're just literally following rules. Whereas with the Melchizedek, you are a part of, you have a much more intimate relationship with, you are aligning yourself with, so to speak. Like I said, you're not joining, but you're aligning because you're already a part of. And we mentioned earlier about prayer is in the same sense what Ron just mentioned. You are the prayer. You are partially the entity that is bringing that into existence. It is why when we talk about Kush and all of those, in terms of talking about trying to explain to get us to understand who we are, because every single thing that church is, in a sense, or religion is trying to teach, they're trying to teach from only understanding it, for example, from a book standpoint, in terms of something that is separate. Whereas with Kush, no, this is you. This is not something that you are trying to abide by. This is not something or a mode that you're trying to fit in. This is you to your core, to your purest essence. So as you understand this more, in a sense, you're becoming more of yourself, not being changed or assimilating to something. You're becoming purer in a sense of your awareness of who you are.
To add to that, Sheldon, Melchizedek was the king of Salem, and I was looking at what Salem meant, and it means to be at peace. It means to be perfect, or it means to be complete. So Melchizedek, as the king of Salem, presumably it was this way because of who he was. And as you were saying, he knew who he was. And because he did, he was at peace with himself, which brought peace to his city or town or whatever. Peace to his community. So it was just knowing who you are and dwelling in that.
So pulling all that together, we become the peace. We become the righteous energy in the earth that will bring about completeness and wholeness in the land. I got off the phone yesterday and I was thinking about something that Evelyn and Sheldon were saying, and it is no doubt that the descriptions that they gave are similarities that a lot of us have faced in our life. And it is also very evident that that is the course of America as far as how businesses are run. It is also evident that most of those people are in church today. So when you look at that peace, that contentment, that completeness has to come from you. That the eye-opening experience has to come from us. And it starts by, we don't always, you act about what you feel. But if you feel like doing something more, you do something more. But part of that eye-opening experience is how you react to things and how we consider things, outcomes of things. So looking at what Audrey was saying, being at peace, being completely at peace and completeness, that is who we are. And that is the energy that you bring to the table in every situation. So.
Yes, Ron, in this world would be a much different place if there was more of a focus inward by the collective. A lot of things that we see in terms of people trying to control and dictate things in the physical world is based upon them not knowing what it is that they're really seeking, and attempt to really get themselves in order, in a sense, inwardly, but not knowing what is the driving force behind their actions and, the things that they do. And then one last thing at the moment on a religion, which none of us would say that religion in and of itself all is just terribly bad. The problem is religion is the sense of going to school up until the 5th grade, and then you being not allowed to go beyond 5th grade, and then you just continue to learn what it is that you learned in your 5th grade over and over and over again, and you're no longer able to grow beyond that.
Any questions about this? Is there anyone who needs more clarity on this? Okay, I know that what has been said in regards to Melchizedek has brought a tremendous amount of clarity to what we mean when we speak of that, and when we speak of that in relationship to who we are. And the last thing I would like to say about that before we go is this: because Melchizedek has no home, the earth in its entirety, the universe in its entirety becomes the home of Melchizedek. And I say that because the responsibility is to give direction, guidance to the world, to the consciousness of the earth, so that it will become righteous. And the power to do that comes from the universe, the source of our creation. Thank you. If there are questions or comments, please ask the question or make the comment at this
I have
moment.
a question. So when scripture says that the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head, can you explain that?
Yes. All it's saying is that the animals of the earth has a home. A bird has a nest, fox has a hole, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. What he's saying is that the builder, son means builder in Aramaic and in Hebrew. And man speaks to the human. Everywhere you see man in the New Testament, it is human. It should have been translated as human as opposed to man. So what Jesus is saying is that there is no physical earthly home for the human. And why would Jesus say that? Because Jesus' experiences were not those that were consistent with having experiences from those who are human. Jesus' experiences were with animalistic thoughts and desires because of his interactions with the priesthood and with the Romans and others during that period of time. The major ones are the priesthood and the Romans. So what Jesus was saying is there is no difference between the religious sector and the political sector. Both of them are a source of manipulation, a source of greed. Does that help you, Evelyn?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Is there anyone would like to elaborate on that? Or
Hey.
raise the question?
Yeah. This is Nick. I would like to add to that. In addition to what Pastor Richard said, the spiritual nature of the human being does not have a place to rest in this physical sort of earth experience in the same way that an animal spirit might. So there is an instinctive remembrance in all human beings that this experience is not your home, nor is it where you ultimately desire to be at all. And so to say that the Son of Man, which is essentially the spirit of the human being, has no place to rest their head, is that they will find no rest anywhere within the material, physical, or sort of earth or animalistic experience, because instinctively we know that that is not where we come from. And instinctively, we will always try to find a way out of this experience. And that's what I wanted to add.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Well, it's Charles. I'm going to speak on the Melchizedek. He was a king, and the king ruled his kingdom. And when Melchizedek, if he gonna rule more than his kingdom, he have to be like God. And so he was a God. He saw like a God figure when he was ruling. And if a king don't have no rulership, what I mean by no rulership, if he don't have no people, he can't, ain't no one he can rule over. So he got to have a kingdom the way he can rule.
Yes, sir. You're right. And the word king in the Hebrew speaks to anointing. So he is it. When we speak of Melchizedek, it is the source of the righteous anointing, meaning that it shares everything it has so that others can be like it. The rulership of a king is not, according to the scriptures rather, is not the type of kingdom rulership that we have learned in this environment or in school. Subjects to kings are there for manipulation and to be servants. In this regard, speaking of Melchizedek, Melchizedek becomes the servant. And when it talks about Abraham having rendered the tithe to Melchizedek, it means that Abraham recognized and respected the holiness, that Melchizedek is the righteousness of the deity, meaning that it is righteous, the righteousness of Elohim. So when we look at it from that perspective, we see that without people, as Shaw said, there's no one to anoint. There is no one to teach righteousness to. So how do you be without people and be a king? It's speaking to the idea of being human. So Melchizedek is the essence of righteousness, and being the essence of righteousness, it brings a sense of remembrance of righteousness to those with whom it comes in contact. And that within itself brings righteousness into the earth realm. Thank you. Questions, comments, clarity? Okay. If there are no questions or comments, say happy Father's Day and bid you a farewell for today, and see you tomorrow evening.
Thank you. Happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.